This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
(1:15). This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Catherine Pereira, read by Soundithavam. The government emphasizes that there is no intention to counter the freedom of expression. A new method to record the evidence given by children subjected to various forms of abuse. An incentive for the farmers to produce organic fertilizer. 15 million rupees will be added to the country's economy by October through the 500 production villages. In world news, arrests after thousands rally against the communist government in Cuba. Minister Ramesh Pathirana says that the government has no intention to counter the freedom of expression. He made this comment participating at the cabinet media briefing held today. He said some groups who took part in protest campaigns were taken into custody according to the recommendations of the public health inspectors. He said measures have also been taken to solve the shortcomings in the quarantine centres. The Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval to establish 9 video recording units at provincial level to obtain evidence given by children who have been subjected to various forms of abuse. The Cabinet paper submitted by the Minister of Education has proposed to establish units within the hospital premises covering all 9 provinces. An evidence video recording unit was established in 2021 since children have to face various inconveniences when providing evidence before the court publicly pertaining to traumatizing incidents. The Cabinet of Ministers has given the nod to pay an incentive of 12,500 rupees per hectare to encourage farmers to produce and utilize organic fertilizer for their own paddy cultivation in the Maha season 2021-2022. In a statement, the Department of Government Information stated that the Agriculture Ministry has planned to meet the requirement of organic fertilizer for paddy cultivation of about 800,000 hectares for the season. Accordingly, necessary steps have already been taken to direct the farmers to produce quality fertilizer, mainly under the guidance of the Agrarian Development Department. The main reason for the attention on the use of organic fertilizer is due to the lack of traditional knowledge of it. Successful results can be achieved by educating all farmer communities on the use of organic fertilizer for their cultivation activities. Several programs in this regard have been organized by the Lanka Phosphate Institute, Agriculture Department and the Govi Jana Services Centre. The chairman of the Lanka Phosphate Institute, Engineer Anil Ranasinghe, has said that the farmers will also be provided with technical assistance on the use of modern technology methods for cultivation. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
People's Bank, celebrating 60 years of empowering the nation.
₹15,000 million will be added to the economy of the country by October under the 500 Saubhagya Production Village program, which is being implemented. State Minister Shehan Semasinghe has said that an additional income would be developed through the implementation of these villages. The government is providing necessary concessions to improve the industry. He made these comments participating in a ceremony to provide benefits to the industrialists who are engaged in clay products. Under the first stage of the program, 79 families will be benefited. Senior DIG Ajit Rohan says an individual who was deported from Qatar for promoting the now-defunct separatist group LTTE has been taken into custody. According to the police spokesman, the arrestee had undergone the quarantine procedure at a facility in Mullayavala in the Mullaitivu district for 14 days. The Terrorism Investigation Division, TID, had arrested the suspect yesterday as his 2-week quarantine period had ended. The 41-year-old, who was identified as a resident of Trincomalee, had reportedly fled to Qatar in 2019. That's local news.
Towards a new dimension in innovation, People's Bank, celebrating 60 years of empowering the nation.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Veda Mahatmya.
The central bank has emphasized that the bank network in the country is in a stable and strong condition. All banks are functioning under the monitoring of the central bank. An economic increase has shown than the expected level during the first quarter of this year. The bank's view is that the transaction of the dollar will be further increased due to the moving of the travel restriction gradually in the future. That came to you in the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
On to Watchlight, the consultant paediatrician of the Lady Ridgeway Hospital for Children, Dr. Deepal Pereira, says Sri Lanka should be vigilant on inbound visitors from India who are infected with the Zika virus, as there are many possibilities that the virus could spread among the locals. He said that the health authorities in the Indian state of Kerala have declared a state of alert recently in all districts after having increased cases of the Zika virus. According to the reports of the World Health Organization, the Zika virus is a mosquito-borne flavivirus and came to you in Watchlight. Moving on to a bulletin of world news, in the headlines, arrests after thousands rally against the communist government in Cuba. The French president says all health workers must get COVID jabs. And vaccine distribution adjusted to adjust shortages in Japan. Media and opposition sources say dozens of people have been arrested in Cuba after thousands joined the biggest protest for decades against the island's communist government. Cubans have been angered by the collapse of the economy, food and medicine shortages, price hikes and the government's handling of COVID-19. The protests are significant as critics face harsh punishment for dissent. The island's president called for his supporters to fight the protesters. Protesters shouted, "Court, freedom and down with the dictatorship," unquote, in demonstrations across Cuba, including the capital Havana. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that all healthcare workers in the country must get the coronavirus vaccinations. Macron made the announcement in a televised address yesterday amid a surge in the country of the Delta variant first detected in India. The variant currently accounts for nearly 60% of new infections in France. The country's daily case count has been exceeding 4,000. On some days, it is double the figure of 3 weeks ago. Macron said inoculations will be mandatory from September 15th for all workers at medical institutions and elderly facilities. Japan's health ministry has decided to reduce coronavirus vaccine supplies to some municipalities that are deemed to have sufficient inventories. The country's vaccine rollout has been gaining speed after making a slow start, but now some governments are facing supply bottlenecks, forcing some to stop accepting bookings for inoculations. The move has prompted ministry officials to review the allocation of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine doses for the first 2 weeks of August. Back to the headlines of the world news. Arrests after thousands rally against the communist government in Cuba. The French president says all health workers must get COVID jabs. And vaccine distribution adjusted to address the shortages in Japan. That concludes this bulletin of world news.
Development News is brought to you by
Quality matters than price. So as an engineer, I recommend Melva RB500. It's made with virgin billets using the latest technology. Melva RB500, number 1 in Sri Lanka. Truly Sri Lankan.
A factory will be established in order to make the use of the calcite facility in Balangoda for the requirement of the country. It has been identified as the world's best calcite facility. At present, around 2,000 tons of calcite have been removed from the excavation activities. It is expected to use these materials for industries and came to you in Development News.
Development News was brought to you by
Quality matters than price. So as an engineer, I recommend Melva RB500. It's made with virgin billets using the latest technology. Melva RB500, number 1 in Sri Lanka. Truly Sri Lankan.
Measures will be taken to strengthen the cooperation between Sri Lanka and Russia in the sports fields between the two countries. It has been proposed to reach bilateral agreements in this regard. Under this agreement, athletics, swimming, gymnastics and several other sports activities will be covered. Organising of sports event, higher education sports institutes, sports federation and other sports programs are to be implemented. The Cabinet has given approval for the proposal submitted by the Sports Minister and came to you in Sports News.
Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply. Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money.
Sri Lanka's economy grew at a positive rate of 4.3% during the first quarter of this year, compared to a negative growth rate of 1.8% in the first quarter of 2020, the Census and Statistics Department said, releasing the GDP summary indicators for the first quarter of 2021. The Department of Census and Statistics released the estimates of the gross domestic product at current price and at constant 2010 price in production approach and other macroeconomic indicators for the first quarter from January 1st to March 31st, 2021. That's business news. We look at economic news next.
Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money. Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
In economic news, the Cabinet of Ministers has approved a proposal to attract digital tourists to the country and to introduce a long-term visa category for digital tourists. Digital travellers often stay in restaurants, public libraries and other such venues and provide their services online through devices with internet access. The proposal made by the Tourism Minister has said the availability of high-speed internet connections for communication, long-term visas, affordable communication and tax exemption for earnings are the main factors to attract them. That came to you in economic news.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
The Met Department says a few showers will occur in the Sabragamu and Western provinces and in the Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Matara districts. Mainly fair weather will prevail elsewhere. Fairly strong winds up to 40 to 50 kilometers per hour are likely at some places over the western slopes of the Central Hills and the western and southern provinces.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
To conclude this bulletin of news, a recap of the headlines. The government emphasises that there is no intention to counter the freedom of expression. A new method to record the evidence given by children subjected to various forms of abuse. An incentive for the farmers to produce organic fertilizer. 15 million rupees will be added to the country's economy by October through the 500 production villages. And arrests after thousands rally against the communist government in Cuba. That concludes this afternoon's news broadcast.